Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, and we're thrilled to work with authors from all over the world publishing books of all types and genres. So, whether you have a book in your head, or a manuscript already on your computer ready to go, or maybe even 300 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by authors who have absolutely unleashed themselves, that's for sure. Our first author today, Zach Pieper, is the author of The Garden of Lies. And in The Garden of Lies, we learn that some lives are defined by a single choice. Selected at a young age to be trained as a warrior for an empire he detests, a wolf shifter must rally his pack against heavy odds in the festival of the hunt. As he plans his path to victory, he must navigate an unsteady alliance with a rival pack led by the eldest daughter of a noble house, while also seeking to expose the foul play of his lifelong enemy. To win the hunt, he must take down the behemoth of the plains before either of the packs, or else he will never be awarded entry into the legendary Trial of the War. Well, I am so excited to be joined by Zach Pieper. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. How's it going?
Very good, thanks. Wow, that's a fantasy story if I've ever heard it. How does one get the inspiration for something that is just so, unless where you are, you actually have wolf shapeshifters and such. But you are from the Northwest, so maybe you do.
We definitely have some sketchy shit that lurks in our woods. That's to be sure. Uh, but I've told this story quite a bit. Doing the rounds, talking about my book. Me and my best friend actually came up with this in high school, and um, we drafted the bones of it. You know, we both were wild-eyed kids with lots of imagination. You know the type, and we kind of just sat down and let our imaginations run wild. And then years later, when I was kind of in the process of actually sitting down and writing the thing out, I did the same thing. I've always kind of just had a tendency to let my mind wander.
Mhm.
And when you let your mind wander and really just write down every harebrained thing that you can possibly come up with, you can you can come up with some pretty cool shit.
That's for sure. Your friend that was in on the ground floor with this, did he have any a part in the writing of it as well, or he was just young ideas guy?
Nah, we drafted the bones together, and he created an original character that he used for like role playing games.
Okay,
And that character is in here, Sinkotsu.
gotcha.
Um, but other than that, he had no part in that was his end of creative contribution. The writing is 100% me.
When you started writing, you had this whole thing and probably an entire picture in your head. Was the writing easier or harder than you thought it would be?
It flowed from me like water from a glass. It really
Ah,
was. There were times I don't know where you stand on faith. I personally believe in God, and I really feel like sometimes I was just sitting there, and God just kind of put His hands on top of mine and said, "No, Zach, these keys." You know what I
oh,
mean? Like some of it really did just flow out, like I wasn't even really sitting there typing it.
oh, that's an amazing feeling to just have it flow like you just had to turn on the spigot and out it went.
Yep.
Now, does Garden of Lies have a sequel? Is more to the
Yes.
story?
Yeah. Garden of Hope is with the editor right now. Kat and me are probably gonna have the editing done maybe 2 3 months tops, judging by the last book we edited. And I'm going to actually draft up the description for the cover art and send that away to my cover artist here pretty shortly. I'm hoping to get Garden of Hope out late this year.
All right, good stuff. And is it 2 books or is there going to be more after that?
There's gonna be a third book. It's a trilogy. I
Really?
have begun writing Garden of Fate.
So we've turned on the spigot and it's not going to end.
No, no time soon.
Good for you. Good for you. And still flowing, still no problem.
I've taken a little bit more of a cerebral approach especially in the third books. The second book was still very direct, just dumped onto the keyboard. But in this third book, I'm really trying to expertly tie everything together, and so there's a little bit more planning and careful deliberation that's going into the third book.
Okay. So when it was all conceived at the beginning, it wasn't 3 books. It was a conception of a story and you kept going.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. I suppose I could have done it in one book, but it would have been like double that length at least, and that's already 149K. And
Oh,
two, if I'd done it in one book, I wouldn't have been able to go on all the side tangents I wanted to go on and develop all the characters that I really wanted to develop. That's one of the places I think my writing really shines, is I really take time to develop my side plots and my characters, and everything that is important gets the attention it deserves.
fantastic. Fantastic. Well, tell me something. This sounds like a movie. Who plays the parts in the movie?
Well, I play the main character. I tell you the truth, I really wouldn't want a big Hollywood cast because I think that star power is overrated, and I
Mm,
would actually want to spend my money on things like settings and the CGI budget. So I would probably spend a lot of time casting and
right.
hire really high quality no name actors.
All right. All right. And how about special effects? Do you have a director in mind?
Who's the guy who directed Avatar?
Oh, okay.
James Cameron. So
So that's,
or
so that's what it's going to look like.
oh yeah, I mean it visually this book would be absolutely spectacular. I mean the shifters and the magic that's used by the shaman, which is my class of magic users, it would be absolutely breathtaking if it was given a proper budget and proper attention. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. I love hearing this. Now, do you do any other writing besides this kind of fantasy? Anything else that comes through your pen, or you're sticking to your genre?
Well, I mean, I have other stuff planned, and I'm also a poet. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I'm working. I'm actually decided to put all my poetry into a book, so I'm compiling all the poetry I've previously written and continuing to pump out more. And I'm probably going to do a book of poems that hopefully within a year or two. And then future books that I have planned are I have a sci-fi, I have a mystery. Yeah, I'm not going to pigeonhole myself. I have a pretty good range of stuff I want to do.
I love that. That's so fantastic. Well, we're going to have you back on when we're ready with the next book. That's for sure. So don't forget The Garden of Lies by Zach Pieper. Our next author, Suvendu Tripathy, is the author of the Crepe Jasmines. And in the Crepe Jasmines is an exploration of the lives of people on the edge of society, their dreams and their desires. A poor Brahmin man from a remote village in Odisha treads the world of rural India as his academic pursuits lead him through the greatly changing times of the 1970s and 80s. From the life of a son of a small farmer to the fast paced big city life of a college student, Partha comes face to face with the judgments of his religion, his economic status, and eventually of the society at large. Please welcome author Suvendu Tripathy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here, Stephanie. And Jack, nice to have met you on Zoom.
How's it going,
I'm
sir?
so, I'm so happy to come to know about your book, and then I'll certainly buy it and read it.
I certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, it's so nice to have authors together and everyone gets to exchange books and such.
So
I
loud.
am so delighted today to be joined by author Suvendu Tripathy. Suvendu, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me.
Oh, thrilled to have you with us, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much.
I know this is a new release, and tell us first, this is not your first book, is it?
Yeah, it is my.
Your
It is
first
not my
published, but
first
you're
book.
writing.
This is a second book I wrote, but it got published first. The
Yes.
first book it is still under the it has been there for a very long time, so I'm probably going to finish it in the next 6 to 7 months.
All
Then
right.
we'll see how it goes.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, especially since we all have a little more time on our hands. Are you still working remotely so you don't have to commute as much right now?
No, I used to commute for 1.5 hours one way. So basically 3 hours a day for my job, day job. And my job entails daily calls with my clients in USA, so I have to work till almost 9 to 10 p.m. my time.
Oh my gosh.
So,
I saw a look of horror past Zach's face. Zach, am I right in guessing you do not commute that far to work?
No, my commute is half an hour on a bad day.
So an hour and a half in each direction. That's 3 hours of extra writing time you have now.
yes, what I do is I wake up in the morning around 5 a.m. and then start writing. So probably most of the days I write about 2 hours.
All right. Well, you certainly have time to get that other book done. That's for sure. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about the Crepe Jasmines in your own words.
Okay, so this book, if you consider, the name and go by what it means, so the crepe jasmine is the name of a flower, which mostly flowers, it flowers throughout the year, but it flowers better during the monsoon season. You will get to basically get the real touch and feel and the fragrance of the flower during the monsoon. And it has a very nuanced fragrance, so it is not like the rose. The fragrance of a rose you can come to know from even 30 meters, 40 meters. But for this flower, to come to know about the characteristics of this flower, you have to come near to that plant where it is there, and you have to know them to realize their goodness or badness or whatever that word is. So so it is akin to the way people in the villages live, whether it is in India or in other parts of the world. And people in the villages, they go about their own lives, they do their work on their daily work, they just get by very with a lot of difficulty. And within that difficulty, within that want of everything, they don't have access to healthcare, no access to good education, and no access to even transportation. In that want of almost everything, they live a rather fulfilled life. They don't have money in the bank, but they don't have any, they have food, they celebrate life, they do all those things. But there is a challenge when they come to, if they want to go out and get a good education for themselves, because for that they have to go to larger cities. So this book is about, how people live in the village, how they dream, how they overcome, all the challenges to fulfill those dreams. And then in the process, how they also overcome all those barriers that is there, put in by the society, like religion, caste, your differences of language, all those stuff. So
Right.
people have their own way of overcoming them. So this book is about that.
It is, and people get to have a peek into a culture and a society they wouldn't have otherwise known about.
Yes, you are
I
right.
love your allusion to the crepe jasmines, that unless you are near to them, you cannot enjoy that beautiful scent, and that we really need to get to know people. In other words, don't judge them from afar. Really get to
Yes.
know them and see what their lives are all about. And that's the
Yeah.
detail that you've brought to the book. That's just phenomenal. How much of the book is autobiographical? Are these experiences that you've had? Are they imaginative? Oh, he's laughing. Now that makes me wonder.
So, the only similarity that we have between the main character and myself, is that I also come from a remote village. I studied in non-English medium schools. I learned my own colloquial language, which is Odia. It sounds like a Sanskrit, more like Sanskrit.
Okay.
And in that village, my father used to work in the government. I mean, my father was not a farmer. But since you live in a village, you get all those problems. You have to face all those problems, like you don't have transportation, no communication. So I used to read a 3-day-old English newspaper to learn English. Okay.
But the things we just don't realize.
Yes. So, both my sons who are growing up in the Silicon Valley of India in Bangalore, they cannot, even understand how it feels, to read 3-day-old time, newspaper.
Yes, well, I think all of our children don't know what it was like to do things. Tell me a little bit about writing. Is writing something that, like Zach, did it just flow out of you, like you just plugged it in, or was it more of a struggle?
Most part, it just it was very smooth. It just flowed like water from the glass. If I can borrow from Jack,
I'll be.
his expression of that.
I like that, like water from a glass. Absolutely.
But some part, I'm not. What I have realized is I'm not very good in describing the life people live in the towns, the cities.
Right.
Or even when people are very close to each other. So when they are in close proximity, what is the way they have to interact or communicate? That part I probably am not very good at. So I mean, even that is showing up probably, the way I have struggled to bring that part, in my description of all those characters.
Right.
Otherwise, I am at is, when it comes to describing the people's lives in villages, how they live, their day-to-day lives, all those things, it comes very naturally to me.
All right, fantastic, fantastic. Well, certainly if you would like a peek into a world that you probably are not as familiar with, The Crepe Jasmines by Suvendu Tripathy will transport you there. Our third author today is Robert Williscroft, the author of Slingshot, which is the first in the Starchild trilogy. The setting is the day after tomorrow. Technology has advanced. The web is more pervasive than ever. Can't even imagine. But human ambition and greed remain unchanged. In Slingshot, Alex Regent, Margot Jackson, and Klaus Blumenfeld reach for the stars as they blend their skills to create the world's first launch loop backed by major software money. Environmental fanatic Lawrence Watson, with his team of young eco-terrorists, is funded by opposing international interests and will go to any length to halt the project. Thank you for joining us, author Robert Williscroft. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm very glad I finally made it. I am sorry.
I love your backdraft, by the way. That looks just absolutely fantastical. Where are you piping in from today?
I'm piping in from the southern outskirts of Denver, Colorado.
Oh, okay. So we're all over. Zach beats you for the furthest west. He's all the way out on the west coast, and Suvendu definitely wins the distance award. Suvendu is piping in today from India. So we're all over the place with time zones and everything else. But outskirts of Denver, where about? I was just in Denver last
It's called
summer.
Centennial. It used to be called
Oh, I know Centennial. Absolutely. Oh, I'm delighted to have you here. So tell us a little bit about Slingshot and how you got your start writing this. What inspired it?
Well, I have led a rather interesting life, different from most. And part of that was when I spent a year at the geographic South Pole in charge of the National Science Foundation atmospheric research projects down there.
Wow.
That is so
When
cool.
I went down there, I took a group, just a handful of scientific papers that I had intended to study, but you know, things always get put off, and that had gotten put off. And I had 13 months of relatively leisure time when I wasn't conducting the research to study these papers. One of them was written by a gentleman named Keith Lofstrom, and he presented an absolutely mind-boggling concept, a way to get into orbit and space without using rockets. Now, the concept of a space elevator had been around for quite a while. The problem with a space elevator is that we don't have any kind of material that is strong enough to carry its own weight from geosynchronous orbit. And so it, at this stage, is just a pipe dream. However, Keith Lofstrom's space launch loop can actually be built with today's technology. It absolutely fascinated me. And so when my stay at the South Pole was over and I came back to the States, I looked Keith up and we spent several days together talking about his ideas and getting to know each other and laying the foundation for the book. You see the background behind me, called Slingshot, which is the story of the construction of the world's first space launch loop that stretches between the equatorial Pacific Islands, Baker Island, and Jarvis Island. And in case Baker Island may ring a bell, Amelia Earhart was on her way to Howland Island, which is just a few clicks away from Baker Island, when she disappeared.
Wow. Well, first of all, I do have to say, and I saw from Zach's reaction, I'm not the only one. You are the only person I've met who's been to the South Pole.
Let me really throw something at you then. I also spent 3 years up in the Arctic ice pack and have been to the North Pole as well.
You've been to the North Pole and the South Pole.
Yes.
That is so cool.
Isn't that like mind blown? Absolutely mind blown. And as a warm weather girl, that really blows my mind.
South Pole, we had a record low temperature, which is still a record today, of minus 117.8 degrees Fahrenheit below zero.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about that.
You know what dry ice is, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's frozen carbon dioxide. And at that temperature, carbon dioxide comes filtering out of the air as dry ice flakes and landing on the surface.
So needless to say, you stayed indoors.
Actually, I had to be outdoors every single day.
Really?
My lab was about 100 yards upwind from the furthest extension of the station. And I had to be in my lab every day. and I slept and stayed and ate at the station. And so I was outside every single day.
Oh my gosh. Brr. And you're also giving all of us who have been, in some sort of lockdown for, a year or et cetera. Okay, that sounds like nothing compared to what you're describing living at the South Pole.
There were 17 of us, and we were in complete isolation for 9 months. This was back before the internet. This was in the 80s. And the only communication we had with the outside was occasional ham radio transmissions when some ham somewhere on Earth managed to get through to us.
All that time
That
you
is
had
neat.
no internet.
Imagine that, no internet.
Okay, so everyone who's been like sitting home binge watching Netflix and everything else, you got nothing on Robert, that's for sure. That is just amazing. So this technology does exist today. They could do this.
In principle, we could do it. It takes a lot of computing power and the infrastructure to build this. You're talking basically of a 2,000 kilometer long structure made of a ribbon of soft iron driven by linear accelerators. This is a huge project. It would be the largest machine in human history, without doubt. And the cost to do this is way beyond right now what the cost is for sending rockets into space. One of the interesting things that Keith did, he wrote the foreword to the book. He shows how there is a curve of the cost of sending things to space by rocket and the infrastructure of rockets and the infrastructure of a space launch loop. And these curves cross. And at some point, we will be sending enough mass into space on a regular basis that building a space launch loop will become entirely cost effective. And when that comes about, it will be built. There's simply no doubt about it. It can be done, and it's feasible, and you'll be able to send freight into space. People will be able to go into space for the same cost as a Amtrak trip from Los Angeles to San Francisco.
Now, does this mean that Amazon Prime will be delivering in space?
Isn't that a delightful concept?
Same day.
Listen, I want my next day shipping, okay? I don't care if I'm on the moon. I want my next day.
Exactly.
There you go, Zach. Except getting to the moon is still going to take you about 3 days. But still, that's pretty good service.
Well, fiddlesticks.
Now, you speak in the book about eco-terrorists. I loved that. And that must be something that interests you, that's for sure. So tell me about that.
I think the best way to approach an answer to that question is that when I came back from the pole, I was in charge of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric diving activities throughout the Pacific, stationed out of Seattle, Washington. And I sat on a government committee, I and another fellow that we were both deeply involved with diving projects. And the committee was made up of people from across the spectrum who were interested in the oceans and in activities in the water, this kind of thing. And we had a couple of people on the committee who were very strange in the sense that they had ideas that made radical seem tame. And my friend and I spent most of our time on this committee saying, no, we can't do that. You may recall that there was a group of environmentalists, they call themselves, who would pound large nails into trees with the idea that when these trees were harvested by foresters, the nails would splinter and they would kill foresters.
Oh.
And this was something that was very real to me. When I went to college, Dixie Lee Ray who ended up being the governor of the state of Washington and then the first chairman of what was then called the Atomic Energy Commission and is now called the Department of Energy. She was my zoology professor. I got to know her well. We spent a lot of time out in the field doing things together. And she helped me to understand that there is a way to protect the environment. There is a way to take care of that which the earth has given us and still benefit from modern technology and science. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. It doesn't have to be just windmills and solar energy. Nuclear power is a marvelous way to go, and it's not as dangerous. In fact, it is not dangerous, despite what you hear out there. But in any case, it was easy for me to put together some of these people that I had come in contact during my years and create an eco-terrorist organization who didn't understand what the space loop was all about and who thought that it would be damaging the environment when in fact it was doing exactly the opposite. And so they opposed it and did their level best to bring it down. And that becomes an integral part of the story.
Right. Wow. You know what I love? We have here three very different authors, three completely different experiences. And one of the things when I lead author workshops and such, that buzzword we always say, write what you know. And people always think, well, I don't know what that means. Well, Robert, you have certainly taken that to an extreme here, but I love that you have fictionalized it. You know, you could have just sat here writing nonfiction books about technology and such, but you fictionalized it, which is just amazing. But in a very different way, Suvendu was writing what he knows based upon experiences and growing up and what the country and the world is like. And Zach, well, we know that there are giant creepy things in your woods, and
and more so in my mind.
and more so in your mind. But you know, I would dare to think that if you lived someplace else, those things that are in your mind would probably be slightly different than they are.
Oh yeah, of course. Your culture has, no matter what culture you live in, your culture always is going to have a tremendous impact on your psyche.
Exactly. But since we are, in a sense, writing what we know, but all three of you are fiction writers, there does come the time that you are just letting it go over to imagination. And Zach was talking about the way he writes, it just poured right out of him like a glass of water. I loved that. And Suvendo agreed. Robert, how about you? When you were writing, did this pour? Are you a planner? Are you a scientific, let me make a big outline of this book before I get started? Or did it just kind of evolve?
Well, my wife, Jill, is sitting here listening to this. And as soon as you said, are you a planner? She started chuckling.
Oh.
I bet.
I create an Excel spreadsheet and I lay out in advance where I think that the book is going to go.
Okay.
I try to lay out the plot and the elements of the plot and the sub-elements, but inevitably, and I mean that quite literally, inevitably, one or two of my characters decide that they don't like where I was sending them and they pick a path of their own and force me to go back into my outline and change things so that I can accommodate their requirements.
You said that so eloquently, and I've had other authors talk about how a character went in a completely different direction than they expected, whether a good guy became a bad guy, vice versa. Somebody, I can't believe he died, and I think, didn't you just kill him? So how drastic are we talking here?
Well, I was out running I try to run 5 miles every day.
Oof.
And I was out a couple of days ago. And what I am currently writing, which is the second book of the Ort Chronicles, called The Foundation to the Stars. And I'm about halfway through the book. and suddenly several of my characters got together, ganged up on me, and forced me to develop, while I was out running, a chapter that I had not written that needed to be inserted several chapters earlier than where I was, which would then require some revising of what I had been writing. And so when I got back from my run 2 days ago, I sat down and yesterday evening, I finally finished that chapter that is now causing me to go in and change the chapters that I had subsequently written so that they can comply with what my characters demanded.
How about our other authors? Have your characters messed you up a little bit and made you backtrack? Suvendu, did your characters do anything unexpected, making more work for you, shall we say?
And not as much as Robert's character have. In my case, more or less the whole book was there in my mind. The only thing that I did was, I wrote down the main characters and how they are going to tell their story. And then I also had planned, how many words or how many chapters I will be devoting to each of those stories.
Right.
So since I had already done that, and then I was kind of, to tell you the truth, when the COVID started, in India, in America, it had already started in early January of 2020.
Okay.
But in India, almost, by first week of April, it started to take effect. So I started my, writing of this book during second week of April. So I was constantly under the impression that if I could not finish my book and I died of COVID, then this story will not be told to anybody outside of my head. Okay. So even while I wrote most part of the book and I was, doing certain changes here and there, even I told my son, who is now 18 years, I said, in case I am unable to publish this, it is your job as my son to get it published. So,
No pressure. No pressure.
so I was under pressure to finish it within that 5-6 months. So, I had to stick to my original plan.
I think that's fabulous. Zach, how about you? Any characters throw you for a loop in the writing that make you work way too hard?
So the fun little thing about my book, my writing specifically, is that I just had the flickering was bugging me. I wanted to match your space theme, man, but I don't have a solid enough background. That's a star map from my book, by the way. But
I love that. I was going to ask you about that star map. That's very
Yep. Yep, that's the canon. That's the night sky from my protagonist's hometown.
Oh, gorgeous.
Thank you. So anyways, to answer the question, my book is very much an exploration of my own psyche. If you read that, it's kind of like a roadmap to my psychology. And so to say that a character had surprised me would kind of be like saying I surprised myself. And I knew where I wanted to go. I really had everything, if not strictly strategically planned, I had everything very emotionally mapped out. I had the symbolism very mapped out and the subtext very mapped out, and I knew what I wanted to hint at, how I wanted to hint at, and the grand scheme was all in place before I started writing. And so, I wouldn't really say anyone surprised me, but as a writer, I kind of surprised myself a few times, because before I wrote this, I didn't think I was that smart. But when I started shopping it around and I sent it to beta readers and editors, and I've told this story on my channel, everyone who wasn't a literary agent said, your book is amazing. When can I buy it? And and literary agents, I think, auto rejected me because of the metadata. It's longer than the typical range for books of that genre, especially for a debut author. So I'm pretty sure they didn't even read it a lot of the time. They just auto rejected me based on the query data in my letter. So yeah, that's probably a longer, more rambling answer than you hoped for, but there it is.
That's quite all right. Absolutely. Now, we have a lot of people who watch our show, not just readers looking for books to read, but writers looking for inspiration and some tips. They say 90% of the population wants to write a book, and you three are knocking it out of the park. So how about some advice or tips for our new writers out there? Robert, I'll start with you.
When I'm asked this question, the very first thing that comes to mind is don't quit. It can become discouraging, especially when people are saying, well, who are you to write a book? What do you know about this? Look at all the competition. And Jack London papered his cabin in Alaska with rejection slips. So why are you trying to do this? Well, the point is you want to, so don't quit. Keep at it, keep doing it, work at it, and get it done.
Fantastic advice. I love that. Keep moving forward. Suvendu, how about you? Any advice or tips?
Yeah, it will be similar to Robert. What I would like to add is don't try to emulate any other writer. Be your own writer, because if you want to be somebody else, it will be very difficult for you to show the true characters that you want to show to the outside world through your books. And then if you are not yourself, then how will your characters will be themselves? Great. So be yourself, write your own book, write your own language, use your own language to write that book. And that way, at least you will have your own originality. You will not be borrowing anything from others. And write every day.
Fabulous, fabulous. And Zach, how about you? Some advice?
Well, if you want a lot of writing advice, you can go to my channel, Zach the Dolge, at YouTube.
All right.
I have a whole playlist of writing advice, kind of my thoughts on how to do a good story. But for just general, really quick, something that my kind of elevator advice that I would give someone stopped me on the street, right? Mm-hmm. Don't take criticism from anyone you wouldn't ask advice from. Mm. Everyone is an armchair author. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if this person has no credentials, no published work, no accolades, why are you listening to them? Why are you letting Joe from the coffee shop who asked for a copy of your book or who you gave your manuscript just kind of to see what he said, and he says it's trash and it'll never go anywhere? Who's Joe? Yeah. Stop listening to the irrelevant voices in your life. Stop letting your anxiety and your fear about your work dictate how you treat your work and how you let other people treat your work. Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't ask advice from.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. We need to listen to you about that, not just about our writing, but about our lives. I think.
Yes, it's a good general piece of advice as well.
It's a very good general piece of advice for life in general. Well, thank you so much. Let me remind all of our viewers where they can find you. Zach Pieper is the author of The Garden of Lies. And Zach, what did you say your YouTube channel was?
So it's ZACKTHEDALJ, Zach the Dolge, YouTube/Zach the Dolge.
Fantastic. Suvendu Tripathy is the author of the Crepe, Jasmines, and we hear there's another book in the works since he has all this spare time on his hands. So you'll want to visit suvendutripathy.com to hear all about that. And Robert Williscroft, you can find Slingshot the novel. And it is volume 1. So there's going to be a lot more going on with Slingshot. Visit him at his website at robertwilliscroft.com. Thank you so much to all of you. You've been such an inspiration, and it has been an absolute joy to meet you. Thanks to our viewers, and happy reading. Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit betweenthecoverstv.com. By the way, at betweenthecoverstv.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.